I didn't want the cabin. When the lawyer called to say my great-uncle had passed and left me his property deep in the forests of Oregon, my first instinct was to decline. I barely remembered the man, but I'd just lost my job, my lease was up, and something about the idea of total isolation sounded peaceful. Maybe I just wanted to disappear for a while. The drive into town was long and silent, the two-lane highway narrowing into gravel roads surrounded by endless pine. When I arrived, the place was smaller than I imagined. Just a scattering of homes, a gas station, a diner that looked like it hadn't updated its menu since the 70s. The townsfolk didn't smile. They stared. One old man muttered something under his breath when I asked for directions. The cabin was about 3 miles out, tucked into the forest like it had been swallowed whole. It smelled of cedar and age. The air was too quiet. That first night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing something moving outside, just beyond the tree line. I opened the curtains and for a moment, I swear I saw 2 dim, glowing eyes watching, unblinking. I told myself it was an animal. A raccoon maybe, or a deer. Oregon's full of wildlife, right? But the next morning, I found deep scratches on the front door, 3 long gashes etched into the wood, as if something had tried to claw its way in. The weird part? There was no mud, no paw prints, just claw marks and silence. I decided to walk into town and ask around. The woman at the diner, gray hair in a tight bun, eyes like stone, tightened when I mentioned the cabin. "That place should have stayed empty," she said, sliding my coffee away like I'd contaminated her counter. When I asked why, she only said, "People don't go out there, not if they want to sleep at night." That evening, I took a flashlight and walked around the property. The trees behind the cabin were dense, older than anything I'd seen, some so thick it would take 2 people to wrap around them. That's when I noticed it, a pattern carved into the bark. It looked like a symbol, circular, almost like an eye, but jagged. I found it on 3 different trees, all facing the house. Back inside, the silence returned. And then, faintly, I heard it, whispering. It wasn't coming from outside. It echoed softly through the walls like it was in the bones of the cabin. That night, I locked the doors, shut every curtain, and left the lights on. But I still felt it, the pressure of being watched. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps on the porch. Deliberate, slow. I froze in bed, holding my breath. The steps stopped right outside the bedroom window. I didn't dare look. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. Finally, I mustered the courage to peek. Nothing, just forest. The next morning, I searched the attic. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for proof that I wasn't losing it. That's when I found the journal, wrapped in canvas, tied with a brittle leather strap. The first page simply read, "Do not trust the silence." I flipped through it. Handwritten notes, crude drawings, dates going back decades. One phrase kept repeating, "It waits where the forest breathes." My uncle hadn't died peacefully. I was sure of it. I read that journal cover to cover. Each entry felt more frantic than the last. My uncle had clearly been watching something or being watched. He wrote about waking up outside with no memory of leaving bed, of hearing a voice that sounded like his own whispering from the trees. He called it the echo. One page stuck with me. He wrote, "It mimics. It learns you. The first time you see it, it studies you. The second time, it claims you." I wanted to believe he'd lost his mind, but every night the rustling outside returned. The scratching grew louder. One morning, I found the boundary of my porch lined with dead birds arranged in a perfect spiral. I decided to follow the sounds. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe if I proved there was nothing out there, it would stop. The forest was colder than usual that evening. Thicker too, like the trees had grown overnight. I followed a trail I didn't remember seeing before, one that curved in impossible ways. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. Not peaceful quiet, predatory quiet. And then I found it, a clearing. At the center, a crude altar made of stacked stones and bones, animal and human. A ring of salt encircled it, broken in one place like something had crossed through. Surrounding the altar were more of those symbols I'd seen on the trees, hundreds of them burned into bark and stone. That's when I felt it. Not heard, felt. A weight behind me, I turned slowly. At first I saw nothing, but then just past the tree line, partially cloaked in shadow, movement. Something standing there. Its body was long, limbs unnatural, The moment my eyes locked with its face, those glowing amber eyes, I couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, tripping over roots, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. It didn't follow, just stood there watching. When I got back to the cabin, I tore the journal from under the bed and reread the phrase, "If you see its eyes more than once, it knows you." That night, I poured salt across every windowsill, left lights on, kept the journal close, and for the first time I dreamed. But it wasn't a dream. I was standing in the clearing again. Only this time it was inside the circle. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, dirt under my fingernails. My feet were cold, mud-caked like I'd walked outside barefoot. The clock read 3:07 a.m. The lights flickered once, then went dark. I grabbed my phone for light. The screen pulsed weakly, battery draining faster than it should. When the flashlight app finally steadied, I saw something on the wall. Muddy handprints. Too large to be mine. Leading down the hallway toward the front door, I told myself I was sleepwalking, that it had to be some kind of breakdown from isolation. But then I checked the journal again. My uncle had written about this too. It doesn't come to you at first. It brings you to it. Every day after that blurred together. I'd lose hours. I'd catch myself staring out the window without remembering walking there. The forest seemed closer, like the trees had moved in the night. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, loaded my car, and drove down the single road out of town. After 20 minutes, I saw the same gas station I'd passed when I first arrived. I kept driving. Another 20 minutes, there it was again. Same cracked sign, same old man on the bench. He didn't even look up this time. I slammed the brakes, stepped out, and screamed into the trees. The echo came back wrong, delayed, then laughter. My laughter. Back at the cabin, I checked my reflection. My eyes looked different. Not glowing, but duller somehow. Like something was dimming behind them. That night, I sat with the journal reading the final entry. It said, "It doesn't just watch. It learns your patterns. When you sleep, it walks. When you breathe, it breathes with you. When you dream, it chooses what you see. When you run, it follows the version of you it already made." A chill spread down my spine. I looked up from the page and saw condensation forming on the window. It wasn't cold enough for that. I leaned closer. The fog shaped into a handprint, 5 long fingers pressed from the outside. Then, as I stared, another handprint appeared. This time from the inside. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside sounded too intentional. I set up my phone to record overnight, just to see, just to know. The next morning, I played it back. For the first few hours, nothing, just static hum and stillness. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the camera picked up movement outside the window. A tall silhouette. Too tall, thin limbs, antlers branching like gnarled wood. It stood there for 27 minutes, watching me sleep. Not moving, not breathing. I couldn't breathe watching it. And then it did something worse than moving. It smiled. My reflection in the mirror that morning didn't smile with me. I smiled. It didn't. That's when I knew. It was already inside. I started boarding up the windows, stacking furniture against doors. The journal was no longer helpful. It ended with that final warning. I was on my own now. At dusk, the whispers returned. This time clearer. They were saying my name, over and over. But not just my voice, my uncle's. The old man from the gas station. Even the diner waitress. All of them speaking in unison, and then silence. The lights cut out. My flashlight died seconds later. The air turned thick like breathing through syrup. And then came the sound I'll never forget. A knock, slow, measured, on the back door. I didn't answer. I didn't move. But then I heard my voice on the other side. "Hey, open up. It's safe now." I fixed the circle, my chest tightened. It was me. My exact voice, cadence, tone. Then another knock, on the front door this time. "Let me in," it said again. "I promise. I'm you." I remember the first time we saw it. I remember everything. "You have to let me in." I backed into the hallway, gripping the journal like it was a weapon. Suddenly, footsteps upstairs, heavy. Not mine. Something was already inside. I rushed to the attic and locked myself in. My phone at 12% battery. I texted a message to myself and never hit send, just stared at the screen. If it can mimic me, will anyone even know when I'm gone? Downstairs, I heard the front door creak open, and something not me walked in. I'm in the attic now. I don't know how long it's been, hours maybe. I stopped tracking time when the thing started pacing below me. It mimics the sounds I make. When I gasp, it gasps. When I cry, it whispers, "Don't cry, I'm right here. I've recorded everything on this phone. If you're hearing this, don't come looking. Don't follow the road. Don't believe the maps. The town's not on any of them anyway." I thought I could outrun it, thought it needed to be invited in. But the truth is, it doesn't need anything. It waits until you stop being afraid, until you believe it's not real. Then it moves. It's quiet now. Has been for the past 10 minutes. I don't know if that's good or worse. Wait, there it is. A knock, not on the door this time. On the attic hatch. "Hey," it says. My voice again, soft and steady. "It's safe now." I fixed the circle. "You can come out." My hands are shaking. The door handle's turning. If this is the last thing I say, just know, whatever walks out of this cabin wearing my face, it's not me. I never meant to step off the trail. I swear I didn't, but somehow, I ended up at a cabin that doesn't exist. It started like any other solo hike. I'd done a dozen of these, and Oregon's Cascade Wilderness had always been my favorite. Raw, untamed, and quiet. That morning, the path was crisp beneath my boots, the map tight in my back pocket, and the chill of fall carried a kind of peace I'd been craving. Life had been loud lately. I needed silence. Around midday, the trail twisted toward a moss-covered ridge, and that's where things started to feel off. My compass spun. The trees thickened unnaturally, and when I tried to retrace my steps, the path behind me was just gone. No footprints. No markers. Panic didn't hit right away. I figured I must have looped without realizing. But as the sun dropped behind the peaks and dusk sank in, I caught a flicker of amber light through the trees. A cabin, nestled between two leaning firs, half shadowed, half lit. Wood shingles weathered, porch steps warped. Smoke drifted faintly from the chimney like someone had just stoked a fire. But this wasn't on any map. No ranger ever mentioned it, and something about it felt wrong. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the cabin like it might blink and disappear. The forest was so still around me, like it had stopped breathing the moment I noticed the place. My gut told me to keep walking, even if I didn't know where I was anymore. But my legs moved on their own, slow and uncertain toward the porch. The steps groaned under my weight. A part of me expected someone to fling the door open and ask what the hell I was doing. But no one came, no voices, just the whisper of wind and trees too quiet. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open, half hoping I'd find a hunter, a ranger, anyone. Instead, I found silence and dust. The inside looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but not abandoned. There were two chairs at the fireplace, one slightly turned like someone had just stood up. A table with a cracked lantern, a faded rug. The hearth was cold, but the ashes were warm. That's what froze me. Not warm like a fire from days ago. Still warm. I backed up a step, but something on the wall caught my eye. Tiny carvings etched deep into the wood. Spirals, eyes, jagged symbols like runes. Some of them looked familiar. I couldn't say why. I touched one and my fingers tingled like they brushed static. There was a hallway to the right leading deeper. Bedrooms maybe. I didn't check. I didn't want to. I just stood there, too unsure to leave and too afraid to stay. That's when I pulled out my phone. Dead. Not just no bars. The screen wouldn't turn on at all, like it had been drained completely. I stood there in the cabin's center, watching shadows stretch longer along the floor, the windows darkening as night rolled in fast. There was no way I'd make it back before pitch black. No moon, no trail, and even if I did, I wasn't sure I'd find the same woods I walked in, so I did the stupid thing. I stayed. I laid my pack by the wall, lit the lantern, and sat in one of the chairs, trying not to notice the carved symbol right above my head. It looked like an eye, and I swear, it blinked. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I sat in that creaky chair, clutching my jacket tighter, listening to the sounds outside, the kind of sounds that didn't belong in any forest I'd ever been in. At first it was branches shifting in the wind, the occasional rustle of leaves, normal things. But then came footsteps, soft, deliberate, pacing just beyond the cabin walls. I stood slowly, trying not to breathe too loud. The window to my left looked out into the trees. Nothing there, just darkness. I waited. Then someone whispered my name. I spun. It came from behind the cabin, low and hoarse, like someone clearing their throat mid-word. Eli, my blood turned to ice. No one knew I was out here. I told no one. Not this trip. I rushed to the door and flung it open. Nothing, just woods, silent, endless. But the whisper came again. Eli. This time it was my mother's voice. She'd been dead for 5 years. I slammed the door shut and backed away, breath ragged, mind reeling. The floorboards felt like they were shifting beneath me. I grabbed my pack and flashlight. I had to leave. Cabin or not, I'd rather take my chances with the woods, but when I stepped outside, the woods had changed. The trail I came from, gone. Trees stood where the clearing used to be. Even the stars above looked unfamiliar. No North Star, no Big Dipper, just black sky and the faint glow of something pulsing behind the tree line like distant fire. I staggered backward, panic gripping my chest. I turned to the cabin, thinking maybe I'd at least grab the lantern, and froze. The front door was closed again. I hadn't closed it. I stepped up, hand trembling as I pushed it open. Inside, things were different. A mirror now hung on the wall where there hadn't been one before. Tall, framed in twisted branches. And in it I didn't see myself, well, not exactly, it was me. But older, thinner, eyes sunken. Wearing the same clothes but filthy, torn. He looked right at me and smiled. And then he whispered, lips not moving. You should have stayed away. I stumbled back, heart pounding, eyes watering. Because that mirror, that wasn't glass, it was water. And something inside it had started reaching out. I don't remember screaming. Maybe I didn't, maybe I couldn't, I just ran. Out the door, through the trees, into the dark that didn't feel like night anymore. It felt like ink, thick and moving. Every direction looked the same, and the forest no longer sounded alive. It was hollow, like the world was holding its breath. I stopped when I saw the carvings again. Spirals cut into a fallen log, identical to the ones inside the cabin. They weren't random. They formed a shape I hadn't seen in years. I knew that pattern. When I was 8, I lived in a small Arizona town near Prescott. My best friend Mason and I used to draw symbols like those in the dirt behind his grandpa's barn. We said they protected us from the woods. Back then, it was just a game. But then Mason disappeared. They searched for weeks. They said he wandered off into the trees behind the property. They never found him. I hadn't thought about Mason in years until now. I dropped to my knees and touched the carving, my fingers trembling. It was the same design, the same grooves, the same shaky lines we scratched with sticks decades ago. None of this made sense. Oregon, Arizona, 2,000 miles apart. But the air, the silence, even the scent of pine felt the same. The forest around me shifted, slow and deliberate. Branches bent inward, overlapping until they formed an archway, a tunnel of bark and shadow. Beyond it, faint light flickered. The same amber glow I'd seen when I first spotted the cabin. And then I heard him. A child's voice. Faint. Laughing. Mason. Every rational thought told me to run the other way. But something inside me, something old, pulled me forward. The deeper I walked, the younger the air felt. The temperature rose. The light pulsed warm and golden. And when I stepped through the tunnel, I was back in Arizona. Not literally, but everything was exactly as I remembered. The same red dirt, the same crooked tree by the fence line, the same missing person flyer tacked to a post with Mason's face on it. Edges flapping in wind that didn't exist. Except one thing had changed. At the bottom of the flyer, scrawled in black marker, was my own name. I staggered back from the flyer, heart slamming against my ribs. The ink on my name was fresh, wet even. I touched it and it smeared on my fingers. Someone had just written it. Was still writing it. I turned slowly. There was the cabin again, right where Mason's grandpa's barn used to be. Same shape, same slanted roof. Only now it looked older, more decayed, like it had been rotting here for decades. Shingles hung like broken teeth, the door half off its hinges, but smoke still curled from the chimney. My throat felt tight. I had to know what this was, why it was tied to me, why it brought me here, so I went back inside. The air was warmer now, thicker. The mirror was still there, but now it was rippling like disturbed water. My reflection stood perfectly still, but behind him something moved. Not a shadow, a shape. I stepped forward. This time, my reflection spoke. You left him, it said. I froze. Mason, it whispered. He called for you. You didn't come, that wasn't true. I was 8. I didn't even know he was missing until hours later, but the reflection didn't blink. You forgot him, but he remembered you. Then the floor creaked behind me. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand. There in the hallway was a figure, small, barefoot, dirty, wearing a torn hoodie I hadn't seen in 20 years, Mason, or something wearing his shape. He looked up at me with hollow eyes and smiled. You found the cabin, he said. Now you don't get to leave either. The walls shuddered. The mirror split, water spilling out in thick streams that hissed on the floorboards. The door slammed shut behind me. I ran to it, but it wouldn't budge. The windows were gone. The fireplace howled with wind that had no source. I dropped to my knees and began clawing at the floor, desperate, manic. That's when I found it. A trapdoor beneath the rug. I yanked it open and climbed down into darkness. It smelled of damp wood and rot. But buried beneath the dirt floor was a crate. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. All of me, hiking, walking, standing outside the cabin, taken from behind trees, dated yesterday. I don't remember passing out, but when I woke up I was back in the chair. The crate was gone, the trapdoor, held. The photos, vanished, like they'd never existed. The fire crackled softly, and the lantern on the table flickered like nothing had happened. For a moment I thought maybe it was a dream, maybe I'd imagined it all. But then I caught sight of the mirror. It showed the cabin, same angle, only I wasn't in it. Someone else was. A woman, early 30s, hiking boots, backpack. She looked tired, lost, and she had just stepped onto the porch. My reflection turned toward me, smiling. You're part of it now, he said, like Mason, like the others. Outside I heard footsteps again. Not mine, not hers, something else. The walls groaned like they were breathing. The window fogged as if exhaling. I don't know how long I've been here. Time slips, bends, rewinds. But if you're hearing this, if you find this story, it means you're close. Maybe you've seen the trees shift, heard your name whispered in a dead voice. Maybe you've seen the cabin. If you have, don't step off the trail. I never meant to. I swear I didn't, but somehow I ended up at a cabin that doesn't exist. I should have never taken the job. I know how that sounds, like one of those melodramatic diary entries you find in a horror movie, right before everything goes wrong. But I'm telling you, I mean it literally. I shouldn't be here. I don't even know what here is anymore. The lighthouse sits on a jagged cliff off the Oregon coast, its walls battered by wind and salt, its windows forever misted with sea spray. There's no road that leads here, only a rusted tram system from the mainland and a supply boat that comes every 2 weeks. But it's not the isolation that gets to me, it's the fog. It rolls in fast like it's alive, thick and cold and crawling. And when it does, I hear them screams every night. Some sound like women, some like children, some like something else. I've tried to tell myself it's just the ocean playing tricks. Echoes, gulls, pressure shifts, but I'm not sure anymore. Because last night I swear I heard one scream my name, and when I looked out into that pale, suffocating nothing, something looked back. I took this job to escape, but I think it found me anyway. 2 weeks ago I was still in Arizona. I didn't have much, just a busted-up truck, a backpack, and a pile of regrets. I just lost my 3rd job in under a year. Dishwashing at some no-name diner in Safford. Before that, it was landscaping. Before that, honestly, I don't even remember anymore. My life felt like a series of locked doors and bad keys. Then I got the letter. It came in the mail. No return address, just my name in neat, almost old-fashioned handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, the kind that feels expensive when you touch it. It said, caretaker position available. Immediate placement. Good pay, complete solitude. Lighthouse, Oregon coast. Meals and housing included. Ideal for those seeking quiet, no number. Just a P.O. box and instructions to reply by mail. It sounded strange. Too strange. But something about it hooked me. I'd spent my whole life trying to outrun the past. Maybe a job where nobody could find me was exactly what I needed. I mailed back a yes. 1 week later, I received a train ticket and a hand-drawn map to a fishing village called Gales Reach. From there, a one-man boat ferried me to the cliffside tram. The man who drove the boat didn't say a word the entire ride. Just stared ahead, jaw clenched, hands tight on the throttle. When I reached the lighthouse, it looked deserted, towering and ancient, its red dome rusted and pitted from the salt wind. The door creaked open with a push, and inside everything was clean, stocked and ready. But the man who hired me? Nowhere, no welcome, no instructions. Just a leather-bound logbook sitting on the table by the entrance. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. Arrived. Fog comes in fast here. Unnatural thick. The entries got shorter over time, less coherent, like the writer had stopped caring or lost the ability to. The last entry was 1 month ago. Still here. Still screaming. Don't go outside during fog, that was it. No name, no goodbye. Just a warning scrawled in trembling ink. I should have turned around right then. I should have gotten back on that tram and begged that boatman to take me anywhere else. But I didn't. I unpacked, I stayed. And the fog came that night. The fog here doesn't behave like it should. It's not morning haze that burns off by noon, or a coastal mist that drifts in with the tide. It comes when it wants, suddenly, violently, like it's been watching and waiting. Some nights it coils low around the base of the tower like smoke. Other nights it climbs the entire height, pressing against the glass of the lantern room like a living thing. That's when I hear them. The first time, I was on the lower level making tea. It was around 11 p.m. The wind had gone dead still and the fog had rolled in thick as wool. I was stirring sugar into the cup when I heard it, a sharp, high-pitched scream. Far off, but human. A woman's voice. I froze, waited. Then another scream, closer this time. A man's voice, this one panicked like he was drowning. I rushed to the door, opened it, stepped out onto the landing, and nothing. Just fog. Endless, shapeless fog swallowing everything beyond 10 feet. No footsteps. No splashing, no people. Just silence, and then one more scream. Right next to my ear, I spun around, nobody there. Just the creak of the lighthouse settling behind me and the shriek of gulls I hadn't noticed until now. I told myself it was the wind. Echoes off the cliffs. But that didn't explain the voices, or the way one of them whispered clear as day, "Help me." The next morning I searched the shoreline. No sign of anyone. Just the same chain hanging off the western rocks, half buried in seaweed, the same rust-stained sand. I returned to the logbook, flipping through entries I'd skimmed the first time. One note stood out. Third night, screams again. Always during fog. Can't tell if they're real. Dreaming with my eyes open. Another. Fog came early. Heard a child calling Papa. My father died in Arizona. This doesn't make sense. The entries got darker, frantic. The handwriting started to unravel, like a mind unspooling. The final page had only one word. Written in huge, shaking letters. Run. I didn't sleep that night. I left every light in the tower on, every door locked. But the fog came anyway, thicker, hungrier, and this time, it knocked. The knocking started soft, barely audible over the groan of the waves. 3 short taps, deliberate, patient. I thought maybe it was driftwood or debris slamming against the outer wall, but then it came again, louder this time, right against the metal door. I froze halfway down the stairs, every hair on my arms rising. The foghorn had gone silent hours ago. The air felt heavy, thick enough to choke on. Hello? My voice sounded small, stupid, no answer. Just another slow, echoing knock. When I finally opened the door, the world outside was white. The fog had swallowed everything, the rocks, the ocean, even the light from the tower. I stepped out anyway, gripping the railing like it might save me from whatever waited in that nothingness. That's when I saw it. A chain, thick and rusted, stretching out from the base of the cliff into the fog-shrouded sea. It rattled as the wind shifted, disappearing beneath the waves. That night I dreamed of her. A woman, half submerged in black water, eyes wide with terror, clawing toward me as waves dragged her under. Her voice, ragged and raw, screamed one sentence over and over. You came from there. You brought it here. When I woke up, the sheets were soaked in sweat. My throat ached like I'd been screaming too. I stumbled to the mirror in the washroom and my reflection looked wrong. Darker under the eyes, like I hadn't slept in weeks. On the counter sat the lighthouse logbook, open to a page I didn't remember reading. The ink was smeared, but the words were clear enough. The sea remembers. The fog follows blood. Don't dream near the water. My hands were shaking as I shut it. The name she'd whispered in my dream kept circling in my head, Saguaro Bay. That name shouldn't exist. Not here, not in Oregon, but I'd heard it once before back home in Arizona, whispered in my grandmother's stories. A place that was supposed to be gone, flooded, forgotten. Now the fog outside was thicker than ever, and I swear if you listened closely enough, beneath the crash of the waves, you could hear the sound of chains dragging through water. I spent the entire next day tearing the lighthouse apart, searching for something, anything that would explain how a name from a half-drowned Arizona ghost story ended up echoing in my dreams off the Oregon coast. In the basement, behind a rusted boiler, I found a trunk, old, warped from water damage. Inside were newspaper clippings, maps, yellowed photographs, all bundled in twine. I sat on the floor and started reading. Saguaro Bay, 1963. An Arizona mining town built too close to a man-made lake. When the dam cracked, the entire valley was lost. Everyone drowned. Or so they said. One article detailed the final days before the flood. It claimed people were already going missing, vanishing into the lake before the water even rose. Locals spoke of voices beneath the surface, when screams, chains dragging at night. A rescue diver was quoted saying, "It wasn't just water down there." I stopped breathing. The last article mentioned something else. Survivors. A group of 8 who escaped before the flood, settling across the country, each one plagued by nightmares and hallucinations. One name stood out, Raymond Holloway, former Saguaro Bay fire chief. And according to a payroll slip stapled to the back of the article, the previous lighthouse keeper. My hands trembled. I wasn't hired. I was summoned. That letter didn't go out to just anyone. It went to someone who came from Saguaro Bay, someone with blood tied to that place, and that someone was me. I thought about the dreams, the screaming woman, the way she looked at me, not just for help, but like she recognized me, like I had abandoned her. I remembered my mother's silence whenever I asked about our family's past, her fear of water, her refusal to take me swimming as a kid, the way she used to whisper prayers during monsoon storms. It all made sense now. The fog wasn't random. It followed bloodlines, and I was never meant to escape it. That night, the logbook was open again on a new page, fresh ink, still wet. One more arrived. He remembers nothing. He will. The fog is back now, scraping at the glass. I hear them again, louder. Only this time, I'm not afraid, because I think I finally know what they want, and I think I deserve it. It's been 3 days since I stopped trying to leave. The tram is gone. The boat never came back. The supply shelves are still full, but I barely eat anymore. The fog feeds me something else, memories I don't remember living. Faces I've never seen but somehow know. Last night I saw her again, the woman from the dream. She wasn't screaming this time. She stood at the edge of the rocks, fog curling around her like a veil, her face hollow but calm. She pointed toward the ocean. The chain was rising again. It's not just a haunting, it's a cycle. The fog doesn't just trap you, it chooses you. It waits until you forget where you came from, then drags the truth back to the surface like a corpse bloated with time. Now I hear new voices. They're not strangers anymore. They say my name like they knew me before I was born. I tried to run from the past, but it was never behind me, it was waiting here. Tonight I will go down to the rocks. I will follow the chain into the fog, because I'm the keeper now, and it's time to remember. I knew it wasn't really my brother the moment I saw him again. He was standing at the edge of the ranger station parking lot, barefoot, shirtless, caked in mud and dried leaves. His eyes met mine, but they weren't his. They looked borrowed, like something wearing his face hadn't quite figured out how to use it yet. It had been 7 days since Lucas vanished in the Tillamook forest. 1 second he was with us, laughing and goofing off by the fire, and the next gone. No scream, no trail. Just the sound of pine needles underfoot, and then nothing. The search teams combed every inch of those woods. I thought I'd never see him again. And a part of me still believes I didn't, because whatever walked out of those trees that day, it wasn't my little brother. I'm telling this now because things have gotten worse. Back in Arizona, our lives were supposed to return to normal, but every day since Lucas came back, he's changed. Subtle things at first, then it started spiraling. into things I can't even explain without sounding insane. But if you're reading this, maybe you've seen it too. Maybe you've lost someone in the woods, and they came back different. It started off like any other trip. Lucas and I had done this kind of thing a dozen times growing up. Camping, fishing, getting away from the Arizona dust and heat. But this time we decided to go farther. Oregon, specifically Tillamook Forest. I'd read about it online. Endless green, fog-wrapped trails and remote enough that cell service would be useless. That was the whole appeal. No distractions, just us and nature. Lucas was 17, reckless, loud, impossible to pin down. He brought his 2 friends, Casey and Ty, both of them glued to their phones until the batteries died. I was the older brother, the reluctant chaperone, but I loved watching them laugh, free from everything. We set up camp a few miles off the Wilson River Trail. The first day was uneventful. Hiking, beer we weren't supposed to have, ghost stories around the fire. Normal. But that first night, something was off. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of whispering. Not words I could understand, more like wind trying to speak. I stepped out of the tent and looked around. The forest was too quiet. No bugs, no rustling leaves, just that eerie stillness that makes your skin crawl. I told myself it was just my imagination. But Lucas mentioned it too the next morning. Said he heard something calling his name. The second night, we found a wooden carving near the stream. A small figurine, almost human-like, with arms too long and eyes hollowed out. It hadn't been there before. Ty thought it was hilarious. Casey looked spooked. Lucas pocketed it. I told him to leave it, but he just grinned and said, "It's probably some creepy local art. Chill." That night we stayed up late, trying to outscare each other with made-up legends. But Lucas was distracted. He kept glancing into the woods like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. When I asked him what was up, he just shrugged and muttered, "I think I'm gonna go take a walk." I didn't think much of it. He did that all the time back home, only this time he didn't come back. By sunrise, we were screaming his name into the fog. Every trail, every turn led nowhere. No footprints, no broken branches. It was like the forest swallowed him whole and it didn't even bother to chew. The panic hit like a sledgehammer. At first we searched on our own, thinking maybe Lucas just wandered off to mess with us. He loved pulling pranks, but an hour turned into 2, then 4. By the time we called the ranger station, our voices were hoarse from yelling. The search team arrived that afternoon. Dogs, ATVs, even a drone. They told us to stay put, to let the professionals handle it. But I couldn't sit still. I paced the campsite looking for anything, torn fabric, shoe prints, even that stupid wooden figurine Lucas had taken. It was gone too. Day 1 passed without a trace. Day 2 brought helicopters and reporters. I stayed in the woods, retracing every step we took. The ranger, a tall, weathered guy named Morales, pulled me aside and asked if Lucas had any reason to run away. Drugs, depression? I told him no. Lucas was obnoxious, sure, but not broken. Not like that. By day 3, hope started to fray. Casey stopped talking. Ty kept throwing up. And I started to dream about it. About something watching us from the tree line. Tall, thin, with skin that looked stretched over bone. I'd wake up sweating, convinced it was real. Convinced it had taken him. The 4th day, a storm rolled in. Rain flooded the lower trails. Still nothing. It was like Lucas had never been there at all. Then on the 7th morning, we were packing up camp to head back, defeated, exhausted, hollow, when the radio crackled. A voice urgent, "We found him!" I ran, heart punching my ribs, expecting the worst. But there he was, standing at the edge of the forest, eyes vacant, body thin but unharmed. No bruises, no scratches, just still. He didn't speak for almost an hour. When he finally did, it was just one sentence. "I was with the quiet ones." Everyone assumed it was trauma. The doctors called it temporary dissociation. He was dehydrated, disoriented, but otherwise fine, but I couldn't shake it. The way he looked at me, like he was still seeing something behind me. The way he flinched when the ranger touched his shoulder. The way he smiled just slightly when he thought no one was watching. It wasn't relief I felt. Not exactly, it was dread. Cold and complete. Back in Arizona, everything should have felt normal. Familiar. Safe. It didn't. Lucas came home to a town that had rallied for him. Welcome back banners. Neighbors crying. Teachers dropping by with casseroles. But he barely reacted. He just watched. Silent, detached, like he didn't recognize any of it. Or didn't care to. At first, everyone chalked it up to trauma, but I lived with him. I saw what they didn't. He stopped eating meat, said it smelled wrong. He didn't sleep, not really. I'd hear him pacing at night, barefoot in the hallway. No rhythm, just random jittery steps, stop, shuffle, stop again. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at himself in the mirror, tilting his head like he was trying to match an expression, like he wasn't sure how his face was supposed to move. And then there was the voice. One afternoon I heard him in his room talking. Thought maybe he was on the phone, but when I pressed my ear to the door I froze. He was mimicking Mom's voice. Not mocking, mimicking. Word for word, tone perfect. He repeated things she'd said that morning over and over like a tape recorder learning lines. He wasn't just changed, he was studying us. I confronted Mom. She brushed it off. He's been through something awful. Give him time. But she was scared too. I saw the way she tensed when he touched her. Like some primal part of her knew this wasn't her son. Then I found the drawings. They were tucked in his desk drawer, dozens of them. Rough sketches in pencil and charcoal, some of twisted trees, some of tall, thin creatures with arms that stretched into the sky. Others were worse. One was our living room, drawn perfectly, except we were all sleeping in it and something stood in the corner watching. But the one that broke me was the last. It was me. My face scribbled out in black ink, deep, angry lines. And beneath it a symbol I didn't recognize, a kind of spiral made of sharp angles. It made my stomach twist just looking at it. That night I stayed up, waited. At 3:13 a.m., Lucas knocked on my door. I didn't answer. He whispered almost too softly to hear. "You shouldn't have followed the voices, Daniel. Now they know what you sound like." I didn't sleep after that. I wasn't sure I ever would again. I had to know the truth. I told Mom I was visiting friends in Phoenix. Instead, I booked a flight back to Oregon. Back to Tillamook. I needed answers, closure, logic, anything to explain what came home with us. The forest looked the same. Towering pines, cool mist, birdsong that never quite masked the silence underneath. I followed the trail to where Lucas had vanished. The place felt wrong. Not visibly, just under the skin like the trees were holding their breath. I showed the park rangers the sketches, the symbol. One of them, a younger guy named Elias, went pale. He told me there was someone I needed to talk to. Her name was Marian, a Maka elder who lived near the forest edge. When I showed her Lucas's drawing, she didn't even blink. She just said, "You brought one of them back." I asked her what she meant. She lit a small fire and told me a story. Centuries ago, they warned of spirits in these woods. Not ghosts, mimics. Beings older than language that waited in the deep forest listening. They'd lure you with voices you trust, pull you away, and when they took you, something else would wear your skin. "They don't kill," she whispered. "They replace." I asked her what to do, how to fix it. "You can't. If it's already inside your home, it's chosen. You leave, or you die." I drove straight to the airport. Tried calling Mom, but she didn't answer. When I landed in Arizona, I called again. This time she picked up, but it wasn't her voice, it was Lucas, calm, cold. "She can't talk right now. She's adjusting." I sped home. The house was dark when I got there. Too quiet. I pushed open the door and the smell hit me first, rotted meat and copper. My heart dropped. I called out, but no answer. Just creaking floorboards upstairs, then I heard it. Mom's voice. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm just tired." But it came from the hallway and then again from the kitchen. Two identical voices, speaking the same sentence half a second apart. I ran. As I reached the porch, I looked back and Lucas was watching me from the top of the stairs, head tilted, smiling like he finally figured out how. And then he said, in my voice, "Come back inside, Daniel. I don't like being alone. I don't know how long I've been running. The desert night outside town feels colder than I remember. Every time I close my eyes, I see the house, dark windows glowing faintly like something inside is still watching. I tried calling the police, but the call kept dropping. When I finally reached someone, I couldn't explain it. How do you tell them your brother isn't your brother anymore? That something wearing his skin took your mother too? I can still hear their voices sometimes. Through the phone, through the vents in the motel where I'm hiding. They sound almost perfect now, almost. But there's always that half-second delay, that strange echo that gives them away. I've been recording everything. If anyone finds this, don't come looking for me. Don't go near Tillamook. Don't answer if someone you love comes back wrong. Because whatever's out there doesn't just take you. It learns you. It studies your face, your voice, your memories until you can't tell the difference, and when it's done pretending, it doesn't need you anymore. So if you hear your name whispered in the trees, run, just run. When I inherited the cabin, I didn't even know I had an Uncle Ray. No family funeral, no lawyers, just a yellowed envelope that showed up in my mailbox one morning, postmarked from a town I'd never heard of, somewhere near the Oregon-Arizona border. Inside was a key, a deed, and a handwritten note that said, "Don't stay past dark. Burn it if you have to." At first I laughed, thought it was some weird joke or a viral marketing stunt, but curiosity sank its claws in deep. A free cabin? In the middle of nowhere? I was between jobs, between cities, between everything. It felt like a strange blessing. The cabin sits at the edge of a dense pine forest, where the trees don't sway, even in the wind. The air smells like old bark and something faintly metallic. And at night, always at night, there's a tapping on the windows, not banging. Not scratching, tapping, measured, deliberate, patient, like someone, something, wants to be let in, but knows it doesn't need to rush. I don't know what I've walked into. But if you're hearing this, I need you to believe me. I don't think I'm going to make it out. The drive into Black Hollow was like slipping through a rip in the map. One of those places GPS tries to warn you about by simply refusing to load. The road narrowed until the trees pressed in on both sides, and by the time I reached the town's single intersection, I felt like I'd left the rest of the world behind. A weathered diner. A gas station with a broken neon sign that just read "Sell." A sheriff's office the size of a backyard shed. That was it. I stopped at the diner for coffee. The waitress froze when I mentioned the cabin. "Out by Fern Hill?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Yeah," I said. "Inherited it from a relative, Ray?" She didn't blink, just poured the coffee too fast, letting it slosh over the rim. "You should leave before dark," she muttered, sliding the cup toward me. "That place, it don't like company." Outside, an old man on a bench was watching me. He hadn't moved since I pulled up. He just stared like he knew something I didn't, and didn't want to be the one to say it out loud. The cabin was deeper in the forest than I expected. The driveway was nothing more than packed dirt and dead pine needles. The trees were ancient here, thick, gnarled, with bark like scabbed over skin. No birds, no insects, no wind. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust hung like smoke in the air. Everything inside was preserved like a time capsule. Wooden furniture, untouched books, yellowing curtains. There was no mold, no signs of decay, just stillness. Like the cabin had been holding its breath, waiting for me to return. I didn't unpack, didn't explore. Just lit a fire and sat in the armchair, trying to shake the cold. Night came fast, unnaturally fast. That's when I heard it. Tap, pause, tap, tap, longer pause. I froze. The sound came from the side window near the kitchen. I stood, heart pounding, crept closer. Tap, tap, tap. I lifted the curtain a sliver. Something pale moved quickly, like a hand retracting just before I looked. But it wasn't shaped right, too long, too thin. I stood there in the silence, too afraid to breathe. Then the tapping started again. On the opposite side of the cabin, I barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made me flinch. I kept thinking about that hand, if that's even what it was, retreating from the window. It hadn't felt like a prank. It felt practiced, like it knew how to stay just out of sight. By morning, I was already questioning myself. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe the trees were playing games with my head. But then I found the journal. It was tucked in the drawer of a desk in the back room. Thick leather cover, brittle pages. The name on the first page read, Raymond Greaves, my uncle. The entries started normal enough. Observations about the forest. Repairs on the cabin. But they quickly spiraled. He wrote about things watching him from the tree line, staying just far enough back to remain shadows. He mentioned the watchers over and over again. Some passages were just rambling sentences that repeated the phrase, "They tap to be remembered. They tap to be remembered." Near the back were sketches, stick figures with impossibly long arms and eyeless faces. One drawing showed a person curled up inside a cabin, surrounded by a ring of these things. The word "trapped" was written in thick pencil beneath it, scratched so hard it tore through the page. I drove into town. Needed answers. At the diner, the waitress wouldn't meet my eyes. When I asked about Ray, she said nothing. just pointed to the old man on the bench outside. He was waiting for me. "You shouldn't be here," he said before I even spoke. "I need to know what happened to Ray," I said. "Did he live here long?" The old man didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, "It knows you're new." I stared at him. "What does?" He just stood and shuffled away, leaving me cold in the sunlight. That night, I locked every door, every window, turned on every light I could find. I even pushed the couch in front of the front door. Still, the tapping came. But this time it started earlier, just after sunset. And it wasn't just one window. It moved around, like something circling, and then the front door handle jiggled, not violently, just testing, like whatever was out there wanted to see if I'd lock it again. The next morning, I tore through the place like a man possessed. I dragged every piece of furniture in front of the windows, hammered boards across the glass using a rusted tool set I found in the shed. I even taped black trash bags over the bedroom window just in case. Then I set up the trail cameras. 6 of them, cheap motion-activated ones I'd bought years ago for a camping trip. I placed them around the perimeter of the cabin, 1 on each side, 2 aimed at the front and back doors. If something was creeping around here at night, I wanted proof. I barely slept again. The tapping returned as expected, but this time I didn't move. I stayed still, gripping the flashlight like a weapon, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the wind. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At first nothing, then 2:46 a.m. movement. One camera flickered to life and showed something. Not clear, not human, just a silhouette, tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the trees. Then more. Figures. 5. No, 6. They stood in a wide circle around the cabin, not moving, not swaying, just standing. But what made my blood run cold was their faces, or rather the lack of them. Smooth, pale skin where features should have been, and none of them faced the camera. They always stood with their backs half turned, just enough to be seen, but never clearly. At 3:12 a.m., one of them stepped forward, straight toward the window. The camera glitched. When the feed returned, it was gone. I shut off the laptop and dry heaved into the sink. Later that day, I found a loose board in the bedroom closet. Behind it, a latch. I opened it, expecting a crawl space, but what I found was worse, a chamber. Cramped and dark with wooden walls gouged by deep scratches, some fresher than others. At the back, a small bench and a lock. On the inside, I stepped in and closed the door behind me just to see. I couldn't hear anything, not even the wind. It was like a sensory coffin, but someone had been down here, and often. There was something comforting about that small, quiet space. Something safe. That night, when the tapping started again, I almost climbed down there and stayed. Almost. The next morning, I made the decision I was leaving. I didn't care about the inheritance. I didn't care about answers. I just wanted to get out. Whatever my uncle had seen, whatever I had seen, it was enough. I threw my bag into the back seat, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, then died. I tried again, and again, nothing. I popped the hood even though I knew nothing about cars. Wires had been chewed through deliberately. Clean cuts, not the frayed kind rodents make. Like someone, or something, had been preparing for this moment. I took off down the road on foot, but after 30 minutes of walking, the trees all looked the same. There was no road, just forest, endless and wrong. It was like the forest had swallowed the path whole. The sun dipped far too fast. Shadows stretched like claws. By the time I got back to the cabin, it was nearly dark. That's when I noticed something carved into the front door that hadn't been there before. Welcome back. I didn't go inside. I ran to the crawl space, pulled the latch and slid the door shut behind me. I waited. The tapping began, louder than ever. Every window, every wall, a syncopated rhythm, no longer patient, like they were angry, hungry. Then I heard it, my name, whispered. At first I thought it came from outside, but then it came again, right behind me. I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. There was something else in the crawl space. I don't remember what I saw. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in the cabin's armchair, the fire crackling gently. The tapping had stopped. Everything looked exactly the same. Until I noticed the journal, not my uncle's, a different one, lying open on the floor by my feet. I picked it up, hands trembling. The handwriting inside, it was mine, page after page written in my voice, describing everything that had happened. Things I hadn't said aloud, and at the very end, a line that made my blood run cold. Day 0. I think I'm starting to forget. The pages after that were blank. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. The days blur together, and the nights never really end. The forest never changes. The clocks all stop ticking at 3:12 a.m., and I haven't seen the sun rise in what feels like weeks. But the tapping still comes, every night. Without fail, it's not random anymore, it's a pattern. A language maybe. One I think I'm starting to understand. Sometimes I tap back. I tell myself it's just to keep my sanity, to have something to hold on to. But deep down, I think I've already crossed a line I can't come back from. I found more journals, dozens of them, different handwritings, different voices, all trapped in the same story, all warning the next poor soul who stumbles in just like I did. The last entry in the most recent journal was dated 4 months ago. It ended with, "If you're reading this, it's your turn now, so I've started writing my own. Maybe one day you'll find it, maybe you already have, and if you're hearing this, if you're thinking of visiting a cabin you didn't ask for, don't just let it rot, because once you hear the tapping, you never really leave." I've lived in Sand Hollow, Arizona my entire life. We're a dust-blown speck of a town tucked between 2 ridges and forgotten by time, where nothing changes. Not the heat, not the people, and definitely not the land. That's why the marker shook me. It showed up on a Monday morning, standing upright just beyond the wire fence that frames my backyard. A perfectly carved wooden post about waist-high, with a red cloth tied near the top, fluttering like it had been waiting to be noticed. I drink my coffee on the porch every morning at 6:15. It wasn't there Sunday. I'm sure of it. At first, I figured it was some Bureau of Land Management thing, maybe trail maintenance, maybe a survey line. But then I asked around. My neighbor Tom, the town clerk, even the park ranger who comes by twice a week for breakfast tacos. None of them knew a thing. They all said the same thing. Ain't no trail behind your place. That's when I noticed something worse than the marker's appearance. Its alignment. It wasn't pointing toward the ridge or the canyon trails. It was pointing straight at my house. The next day it had moved, not far, maybe 3 feet, but enough to notice. It still stood just outside the fence, but now it was angled slightly more toward my back door. I stared at it from the porch, coffee cooling in my hand, trying to convince myself the wind had nudged it or maybe someone was pulling a prank, but it was dug in, clean, solid, no footprints, no tire tracks, no signs of anyone near it. That afternoon, I went to the library to dig up old county trail maps. Ms. Delaney, the librarian, helped me scan through the archives. We dusted off records going back to the 1930s. Nothing. No official trail, no informal one, not even a proposed route in that direction. The land behind my house was supposedly untouched scrub and desert rock for miles. That night, I set up my old hunting trail cam facing the fence. I wanted proof or maybe just peace of mind. I slept lightly, waking every couple hours and checking the clock. At 3:12 a.m., I thought I heard something, a soft scraping sound like something dragging across gravel. But when I looked out the window, the marker hadn't moved. The next morning, I retrieved the camera. Dead batteries. Brand new Duracells drained completely. That put a cold knot in my stomach. The marker had shifted again, closer, now barely a foot from the fence. The red cloth was tattered but still tied, except it looked damp, like it had been dipped in something thick, dark. I didn't want to think blood, but I couldn't stop thinking it. I texted my buddy Eric, who works with search and rescue. He agreed to swing by later that evening. Probably just a prank, he said. Weird kids messing around. But when he showed up and saw it, his face changed. "This isn't any trail marker I've ever seen," he muttered, crouching beside it. "Too thin, too smooth. And this symbol," he pointed to a faint carving near the base. "That's not standard forestry, I don't know what that is." Neither of us noticed until it got dark that the birds had stopped chirping. The silence stuck with me. That night, even the cicadas were absent. No wind, no owls. Just this crushing, unnatural stillness, like the world was holding its breath. I couldn't sleep. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I had to follow it, see where the damn thing led. If it was a prank, I needed to catch someone in the act. If it wasn't, I didn't want to let my imagination spiral any further. I packed light, flashlight, compass, extra water, flare gun just in case. The Arizona desert isn't forgiving even to locals. I crossed the fence and stood in front of the marker. Up close, it looked older than it had before, sun-bleached but splintering as if it had been there years instead of days. It pointed northeast, toward a low ridge. No path, no footprints, but something in my gut told me to keep going. After about a mile, I came across another marker, identical except this one had 2 red cloths tied to it. No footprints around this one either, just hard-packed earth and dry brush. I moved forward, each marker leading to the next like breadcrumbs. 4, 5, 6 in total, deeper into nowhere. By the 7th marker, the terrain began to change. The brush thinned. The air felt heavier. I started seeing things, not hallucinations, just wrongness. A jackrabbit lying dead under a bush, no wounds, no decay. Buzzards circling above, but never landing. Rocks arranged in deliberate spirals that hadn't been there before. And the silence never broke. At the 8th marker, I stopped cold. Carved into a stone slab was a symbol, the same as on the base of the 1st marker. Crude, circular, and slightly uneven, like a child's drawing of an eye. Beneath it was something worse, a half-buried altar made of stacked bones. Animal bones, I hoped, but one piece, long and straight with a rounded end, it looked unmistakably human. I backed away, heart hammering, mouth dry. I wanted to run, but the air felt syrupy, dragging at my limbs. My flashlight flickered even though it was fully charged. That was when I heard it, a soft rhythmic clicking, like stone tapping on stone, coming from just beyond the ridge. And then, a voice, not loud, not angry, just waiting. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to. My legs just moved. I sprinted back through the brush, past the markers, tripping, cutting my palms on the dry soil. The air behind me throbbed with a low hum like static pressing against my skull. I didn't stop until my house came into view, shimmering in the desert heat. When I finally collapsed on my porch, my lungs burned like fire. The trail was gone. I looked back, the desert was empty. No markers, no altar. Nothing but endless tan and stone. For the rest of the day, I sat inside, curtains drawn, heart still drumming from the sound I'd heard. That clicking, deliberate and too human. I tried to tell myself I imagined it, that the heat got to me, but the image of those bones wouldn't leave my head. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes. The altar, the eye carved in stone, and that red cloth fluttering in wind that didn't exist. Around 2 a.m., I heard a faint tapping sound from outside my window. I froze, every muscle rigid. Then came a whisper. Just one word, closer. I ripped open the curtains. Nothing but the empty yard. I stayed up till dawn. When morning came, I went to make coffee, and there it was. The marker. Back again. This time inside the fence, standing tall in the middle of my backyard. The red cloth was gone. In its place, tied near the top, was a strip of what looked like faded fabric, denim. I didn't own anything denim that color. I checked the fence. Locked. No footprints. The ground was undisturbed. I told myself to document everything. I took pictures, wrote notes, even recorded voice memos. I needed proof. Something tangible to convince myself this was real. But that night, the dreams began. Vivid, suffocating dreams of being buried beneath the desert floor. Voices whispering coordinates, promising silence if I just followed. When I woke up, my fingernails were filled with dirt, and outside, the marker had changed again. The post wasn't wood anymore, it was bone. I didn't touch it. I couldn't, I just stood there staring at the thing. It looked like a femur maybe, bleached white, still with scraps of sinew clinging to one side like something had gnawed it clean. The strip of denim was still tied around the top, tighter now like it had been knotted with purpose. I tried calling Eric again, straight to voicemail. I tried driving into town, but my truck wouldn't start. I checked the engine, nothing wrong. Battery strong, full tank of gas, still wouldn't turn over. It was like something didn't want me to leave. That night, I brought the trail cam back out. I placed it facing the marker, triple-checked the batteries, even hooked it to a portable charger. I left all the lights on in the house and kept a baseball bat next to the bed. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard it again. The clicking, slow, deliberate, louder this time, followed by a dragging sound, like something pulling its weight through gravel and bone. I didn't look outside. When I checked the camera footage the next morning, the files were corrupted. Just static and distorted shapes, something humanoid maybe. But the movements weren't right. Jerky, unnatural, like it didn't fully exist in our world. The marker was now less than a foot from my back door. I snapped. I grabbed it, yanked it from the ground, and hurled it into the fire pit. I soaked it with lighter fluid and lit the match. It burned, but the smoke smelled like charred meat and the wind carried it in my face no matter where I stood. I gagged, threw up, went inside. But the next morning it was back, not in the yard. In the house, standing upright in the hallway outside my bedroom. No red cloth, no denim, just bone perfectly balanced on the floor, waiting. I knew what I had to do. The only way to end it was to go back, to return to the altar. Maybe I had trespassed. Maybe I had taken something that wasn't mine to witness. I waited until nightfall. Packed salt, a flashlight, a knife, and an offering. A photograph of me as a child, smiling, innocent, untouched. It felt right, or necessary. The desert welcomed me back without sound. I reached the altar just before midnight. The moon was high, casting pale silver across the stones. The spiral of rocks was intact again, as if I'd never stepped on them. At the center sat a new marker, bone just like before. But this one had something tied around it, my photo. I stepped closer, heart pounding like a war drum. The clicking began again, louder now, circling me. Shadows moved behind the ridges just outside the light. I knelt and placed the photo beside the marker. I whispered, "I return what's not mine." The air shifted. The clicking stopped. For a moment, the silence was clean. Not empty, peaceful. Then the altar flared with light, blinding and cold. I saw faces, dozens, flickering behind my eyes, all staring back. Some smiled. Most didn't. When I woke up, it was morning. I was in my bed. Everything looked normal, but I'm not. My reflection doesn't blink when I do. My voice has an echo, like something speaks with me. My thoughts aren't always mine. And last night, I placed a trail marker behind your house. Look outside. Tell me if it was there yesterday. I wasn't supposed to be out there. The sky had already turned that shade of burnt orange the Arizona desert gets right before sundown, when shadows stretch long and everything feels off. I wasn't looking for anything, just walking off the trail, numb, trying to outrun my own thoughts. That's when I saw it, a phone, just lying there in the dirt, black spotless, screen glowing faintly. No charger, no signal, no service. Just one word flashing across the screen. Incoming call. It was already ringing. I know how it sounds. Phones don't just ring in the middle of nowhere, not without a tower, not without power. But this one did. And the worst part? My name was on the screen. Not mom or unknown, my name. I should have left it there, walked away, maybe even run. But I didn't. I stared for a few seconds, then picked it up. The voice on the other end? It wasn't mine. It was my sister's. She's been dead for 6 months. I hadn't gone into the woods looking for peace. There's no peace after you bury someone you love, especially when you're the one who found them. My sister, Danielle, was only 24 when she died. Found her face down in her apartment, cold as marble. The autopsy called it sudden cardiac arrest. No warning signs, no previous issues, just gone. So when I drove out to the Apache wilderness that weekend, it wasn't for hiking or healing. It was to feel small enough that maybe the pain wouldn't follow me. I parked my car off a gravel road, shouldered my pack, and walked deeper into nowhere. I didn't even bring my own phone, intentionally. I didn't want the distraction. No GPS, no texts, just silence. That silence broke when the ringing started. It was faint at first. I thought I was imagining it. A trick of grief. But as I turned through a thicket of brittle mesquite branches, I saw it. A sleek black phone sitting atop a stone, perfectly upright. Pristine. No dust, no scratches. Lit up like it had just been charged. The name on the screen wasn't a contact. It was mine. I froze. That was the moment. the fork in the road. I could have left it there, buried it, smashed it. Instead, I reached out almost like something was pulling my arm and answered it. Hello? Static at first, then breathing. Shaky soft, then, Eli? I forgot how to breathe. Who is this? Silence again. Then, don't hang up, please. I don't know how long I can stay. My knees went weak. That voice. I'd know it anywhere. The tiny catch in the throat when she was nervous. The way she said my name like it was her own heartbeat. Danielle. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. But the voice didn't respond. Just breathing, and then, you shouldn't have picked up the phone, Eli. Click. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time after that, holding the phone like it was a grenade. I turned it over in my hands. No ports, no logos. Just smooth obsidian glass and that hollow feeling spreading in my chest. And then it rang again. I didn't sleep that night. I camped near the tree line, though after the second call I seriously considered hiking back to the car in the dark. But something about that voice, Danielle's voice, kept me rooted there. I held the phone in my lap like it might vanish if I looked away. It didn't ring again for hours. Just sat there, pulsing faint light from the screen like a heartbeat. Sometime around 2 a.m. it buzzed. This time the screen didn't say my name. It said unknown. I almost let it go to voicemail, if such a thing even existed for this thing, but my thumb moved on its own. The voice was a man's. Hoarse. Broken. You're near it now. You need to leave before sunrise. Who is this? I whispered. It doesn't matter. Just drop the phone, walk away. If you take it back with you, they'll follow. Who will? But he'd already hung up. I turned the phone off. Or tried to. No buttons, no menus. Just a blank screen when I swiped. Like it had gone to sleep. I placed it in my backpack, zipped it shut, and stared out into the dark. And then faintly I saw movement. Figures. At the edge of the woods. Standing still between the trees. I told myself it was the shadows. Just my mind playing tricks on me. But I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I waited until daylight and practically ran back to my car. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Back in town, I threw the phone into the drawer of my desk, convinced it was just some elaborate hoax. A prank with a voice emulator. Maybe someone hacked a Bluetooth speaker. My brain tried to rationalize every angle. That night, it rang again. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The drawer shook like something inside was alive. Caller ID. Mom. I hadn't spoken to her in 5 years. She died in a car accident when I was in college. I didn't answer. Not that time, but over the next few days it rang constantly. Names I recognized, names I didn't, voices begging, voices whispering, some sobbing, some screaming. I should have been terrified. I should have thrown it into a fire. Instead, I kept listening, because one voice kept coming back. Danielle. By the end of that week, I couldn't think straight. Every time the phone rang, my chest tightened with equal parts dread and hope. Each call was different. Some voices crying for help, others repeating words I couldn't understand. But Danielle's voice, hers came back 3 times. Each time weaker, like she was fading. I needed answers. So I drove to the local library in Sedona, the closest town with more than a gas station. I asked the old librarian if she knew anything about dead zones, electromagnetic weirdness, anything that could explain this. She looked at me for a long time before saying, "You found it near the Mescal Ridge, didn't you?" I froze. She nodded, lowering her voice. "People see lights there. Hear things. Some say it's an old burial ground. Others say it's where the world's thin, where the living and the dead overlap." That night, I tracked down a man she mentioned. Calder, a reclusive prospector who lived on the outskirts. His place looked abandoned. Rusted tools, a wind-beaten trailer, and crosses made of sticks hanging from trees. He opened the door before I knocked. "You shouldn't have taken it," he said. I told him everything, every call, every name. He listened quietly, then poured himself a shot of whiskey and muttered, "Phones like that. They're markers. Portals, maybe. People say they were left by the ones who wanted to talk to the other side. But once you answer, they know you're listening. And they don't stop calling." I asked who they were. He looked up, eyes wet and tired. The ones who never moved on. The lost ones. But sometimes, the living get trapped too. As I left, he called after me. If it rings again and it's your voice on the line, run. Don't speak. Don't listen. I didn't believe him. Not really. But later that night, as I sat in my car with the phone on the seat beside me, it started ringing again. No name this time. Just static on the screen, pulsing, I answered. The line crackled, and then I heard it. My own voice, whispering, "Eli, you shouldn't have answered the first call." And then laughter, mine but not mine. I threw the phone into the river the next morning. Watched it sink beneath the surface, bubbles rising like the last breath of something drowning. I waited 10 minutes just to be sure. No ringing, no static, no reflection of my own eyes staring back from its glass surface. But when I got back to the cabin, it was sitting on my nightstand. No wet marks. No scratches. Just glowing. It rang the moment I opened the door. I didn't answer. Not this time. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove back to the woods. The same trail, the same trees, the same stone where I found it. I dug into the earth with my hands, bleeding, shaking, and buried it as deep as I could, and again it came back. Each time I tried to get rid of it, it returned. Like it was tethered to me, like I'd accepted something when I answered that first call. But it wasn't just the phone anymore. I started seeing people, figures in mirrors, shadows in the corners of rooms that shouldn't be there. One night I woke up to Danielle standing at the foot of my bed. Her face was wrong, not decayed, but too smooth, too symmetrical, like a memory recreated by something that had never been human. She didn't speak, just pointed to the phone. The next day I noticed something else. My own reflection lagged in the mirror. Just a second, maybe less, but enough to make my skin crawl. My voice sounded distant, hollow, like I was already on the other side of something listening through static. I returned to Calder, desperate for anything. Rituals, salt circles, fire. He wouldn't let me in, said I was too close now. "You're not being haunted," he said through the door. "You're being replaced." The word hit like a blade. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. That night, the phone didn't ring, instead I did. The sound echoed from my own throat in the middle of the night, a long mechanical tone, just like a ringer, echoing in my chest like my body had become the conduit. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, and it smiled before I did. I don't know how long I've been here now. Days blur, nights feel endless. I haven't left the woods in weeks, maybe longer. The phone doesn't ring anymore, not in the usual way. Now I hear voices in the wind, in the rustle of leaves, in the hush between my own heartbeats. Sometimes I still try to scream for help, but the sounds come out wrong, echoed, warped, like they're bouncing between worlds before they reach my lips. And then tonight, I heard it. Another ringtone, but not from my phone. This one was newer, crisper, a different tone. I followed the sound through the trees until I saw her, a girl maybe 19, crouched by the old stone. She was holding a phone, not mine, hers. It rang again. She looked confused, scared, just like I must have looked. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and answered. "Hello?" I tried to shout, to warn her, but she didn't see me, didn't hear me, because now I understand I'm the one calling. I've only told this story once, and even then, I didn't get halfway through before the person begged me to stop. Not because it sounded unbelievable, though it does, but because of what it made them feel. I think some stories aren't meant to be told. This might be one of them. It happened in Oregon years ago during a solo camping trip I took just to clear my head. Nothing special. I wasn't chasing ghosts or legends or anything like that. I just wanted quiet. The kind of quiet you can only find in the middle of nowhere. Surrounded by trees that stretch taller than buildings and skies so black at night it feels like the world forgets you exist. But something remembered me. Something noticed me, and at dawn on the second morning I woke up to it. Figures, still, silent, standing all around my tent. Dozens of them. Too many to count. Some close enough to touch. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. I know how it sounds. But I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't sleepwalking or hallucinating, and I have proof. One photo. One horrible, blurry photo I've never shown anyone, because once you see them, they might see you too. I left Phoenix just after sunrise, packed light. Tent, flashlight, knife, a couple of books, and enough food for 3 days. Oregon was colder than I expected that time of year, especially in the Cascades, but I wasn't there for comfort. I needed to be somewhere far, somewhere nobody could find me. Not because I was running from anything, I just needed the silence. I drove until paved roads turned to gravel, then parked near a rusted trailhead marker so weather-worn it barely clung to the post. A wooden sign nearby read, "Crooked Pine Trail, Esther, 1932. I hadn't heard of it. That was the point. The forest swallowed sound in a way that made my ears ring. The crunch of boots on fallen needles was the only thing that tethered me to reality as I hiked deeper, trees tightening like ribs around a heart. No cell service, no maps, just instinct. I set up camp near a small ridge by a dried-out creek bed. The sun filtered through the trees in slanted golden bars, and for a while, it felt perfect, peaceful. That was the last time I'd used that word. At the local gas station earlier, a bearded man in a flannel had glanced at my tent and said, "You're not camping past Timber Hollow, are you?" I told him I didn't know what that was. "Good," he said. "Stay that way." I laughed it off. Locals always had stories, skinwalkers, spirits, whatever. Every town has its boogeyman. But that night, when the fire was low and the stars were the only light, I started to understand something ancient lived in those woods. Not just animals, not just stories. The wind died completely. The usual nighttime sounds, crickets, owls, rustling leaves, stopped all at once, like someone hit a mute button on the world. I felt it before I heard it. A tension in my spine, like I was being studied, not from one direction, from all of them. I scanned the trees but saw nothing. Still, I whispered to the dark anyway, "Is someone out there?" No answer. Not then. But I swear I saw something flicker between two trees. Just a flash. A pale outline, gone as quickly as it came. I barely slept that night. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I'd hear something. A twig snapping, the soft shuffle of leaves, a low murmur like someone speaking just beyond comprehension. I kept the flashlight clutched in my fist, beam darting across the tent walls every time a sound crept too close. But nothing ever showed. When morning came, it was as if the forest had no memory of the night before. Birds chirped again. The trees swayed gently. Everything seemed normal, but it wasn't. Near the fire pit, I found something. 3 small rocks stacked in a perfect triangle, balanced so delicately it couldn't have happened by chance. I hadn't put them there, and no animal had opposable thumbs. I kicked them over, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Around midday, I hiked a short loop trail behind the ridge. I told myself I was exploring, but really I wanted to see if someone else was out there, another camper, a ranger, anyone. But there were no tents, no boot prints, just trees. Miles and miles of trees. That's when I noticed the carvings, strange symbols etched into the bark of a fir tree. Then another, and another. Not initials, not hearts or arrows or anything kids would leave behind. These were older, deeper, some resembled eyes, others looked like bones. I took a picture, thinking maybe I'd look them up later. But the photos came out blurred, like the lens refused to focus on them. That night, the whispers returned, not from outside, from within the tent. It was soft, softer than breath. I couldn't understand the words, but they were right next to me, behind me, underneath me. I spun in place, flashlight shaking in my grip, but again, there was nothing. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching in a wide circle around my tent. I zipped open the flap and aimed the light. The beam caught nothing but trees, and one deer, standing about 15 feet away, still as a statue. Its eyes reflected the light like glass. It didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. I yelled, waved, threw a rock. Nothing. It stayed there until I finally climbed back inside and zipped the tent shut, heart pounding. When I looked again hours later, it was gone, but in its place, the rocks were back, stacked again. Sometime before dawn, I finally passed out. It wasn't restful sleep. It was the kind of blackout exhaustion that happens when your mind gives up before your body does. When I woke, the world felt wrong. The air was heavier. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was oppressive, like a vacuum pressing against my ears. The first thing I noticed was the light. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but everything was bathed in this faint, bluish-gray hue that made depth hard to judge. I remember thinking, It's too quiet again. Not even wind. Not even my breath, it felt like. I unzipped the tent halfway and peeked out. They were there. Dozens of them. Figures. Tall, motionless shapes standing between the trees, all facing my tent. At first, I thought they were people. Campers maybe, or a search party. But they didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even sway, though the trees around them shivered slightly. They looked human, but wrong somehow. Limbs too long, shoulders bent forward, heads tilted like broken dolls. I tried to call out, but my voice came out as a dry whisper. My limbs wouldn't cooperate. It was like I'd been paralyzed by my own terror. I blinked, thinking maybe I was still dreaming. But they were still there. Closer now. I crawled backward into the tent, clutching my flashlight, and turned it on. The light flickered weakly. When it steadied, a shadow stretched across the tent wall, a silhouette right outside the fabric. Just one, perfectly still. Inches away, I stopped breathing. For a moment, I thought I could hear it breathing instead. A slow, wet inhale, a sigh. Then the shape was gone. I counted to 10, then 20. Silence. When I finally gathered the courage to peek again, the clearing was empty. Every last figure had vanished, but something was off. The sun hadn't moved. The light outside stayed frozen, that same dull dawn glow. My phone said it was 6:23 a.m. It said that for over an hour. Time wasn't moving right. Then I saw movement just beyond the ridge. A single figure watching from behind a tree. I swear it was smiling. Its head cocked slowly to the side before melting back into the gray mist. That was when I knew I wasn't getting out alone. I didn't pack up. I didn't even grab the tent. I just ran. I left everything, my gear, my food, even my flashlight. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs buckled, branches slashing at my face as the forest tore at me like it didn't want to let go. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, I thought I saw them, those pale, still figures peeking from behind trees or standing just out of focus. They didn't chase me, they didn't need to. They were always ahead of me. At one point, I tripped over a root and fell hard, face pressed into the dirt. I could hear them again. Soft footsteps, leaves shifting, the faint creak of limbs not meant for walking. When I looked up, I saw bare feet inches from my head, cracked and gray like old bark. But when I blinked, they were gone again. I stumbled forward, half crawling now, until the woods finally thinned, and I saw the ranger station through the trees. I collapsed just outside the door, slamming my fists against it until someone opened up. A young ranger, maybe early 20s, looked at me like I was insane. I was sobbing, rambling about figures, symbols, silence. He helped me inside, gave me water, tried to calm me down. I begged him to check the tower footage. Told him they must have seen something. Reluctantly, he agreed. A few minutes later, he came back. He didn't say a word at first, just stood there pale. Then he told me flatly that the cameras didn't pick up anything. I didn't believe him. So I waited until he stepped out to radio someone, and I slipped into the back room where the monitors were still on. I saw it, just for a second. One frame. There I was, running through the clearing, tent in the background. And behind me, at least 8 figures, motionless, surrounding the fire pit. Blurry, but definitely there. Watching me the next second of footage, gone cut deleted. The ranger came in, saw me staring, and quietly powered off the screen. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten me, he just said, "You're not the first." I asked him what that meant. He only replied, "They never follow you, unless you tell someone." Then he handed me my keys and said, "Drive, don't stop." And don't talk, I didn't stop. I drove straight through the day and into the next night, barely blinking. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I expected to see them, standing in the middle of the road, waiting. But the road stayed empty. For years, I kept my mouth shut. I moved back to the city, got rid of my camping gear. I haven't stepped into a forest since. Even walking near parks makes my skin crawl, but I still see them. Not fully. Just flashes. Reflections in windows, corners of crowded places. Once I swore I saw one standing at the edge of a parking lot, head tilted like it remembered me. I never told anyone. Until now, and I shouldn't be doing this. I know that, but something changed last month. I was cleaning out my old laptop and found that photo, the one I took of the tree carvings. It had somehow reappeared in my cloud storage, though I'd deleted it years ago. Except it wasn't just the carvings anymore. There were figures in the background, watching me. I won't upload it. I won't share it. Because if they see you looking, they might come looking back, and this time they might not just watch.